Ann Cribbs. Jeff Lemire. Don McDougall. Keith Reckdahl. Jeff Greenfield.
Here.
Ryan McCauley. David Moss. And Adrian Fine.
Okay, next is any agenda changes, requests, or deletions. Does anyone have any changes they want to make? Okay, failing that, we'll move on to oral communications. Okay, and we have David, Carnahan. David is going to speak to us now.
Thank you, Commissioners. David Carnahan in the City Clerk's office. Normally you see me here when we're recruiting for boards and commissions. We're almost ready to do our spring recruitment, but we're not quite organized enough yet for me to have that information for you. I'm here tonight to present a proclamation and a gift of appreciation to Commissioner Reckdahl. These gifts and proclamations are typically prepared annually for each board and commission member, and unfortunately our event this year was held on a night where there were so many competing city events, numerous folks were not able to attend. So I'm, on behalf of the mayor, on behalf of the city council, presenting a proclamation and a gift to you, and I promise I will not read the whole thing.
Yeah, thank you. David and Ann, you attended?
Yes.
Okay, you're ahead of me then.
Very nice.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So. Collector's item signed by Mayor Burt. Okay. Now we'll move on to, failing any other oral communications, if anyone has any subject they want to talk to, whether it's on the agenda or not, please fill out a speaker card and hand it over to the secretary. Okay, we'll move on to business. The first business is approval of draft minutes from the December 14th meeting. Did you have any comments on that?
No, everything's fine.
No, okay. Failing that, do we have a motion to approve?
So we need a motion, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I make a motion to approve the minutes of December, what was it, 14th? 14th.
I second it.
Okay. Since there's only 3 of us that were there, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the rest abstain? Okay. So the minutes have been approved. We'll move now to the election of the chair and vice chair.
And
Okay.
Commissioner Reckdahl, could I thought it might be helpful if the commissioners introduce themselves. We have, the majority of our commissioners are new, which is exciting, and we thought it would be good to introduce, have some introductions and just a brief background on why you applied to be on the Parks and Rec Commission and maybe what your interests are, and then we'll do the same here from the staff end.
Okay. We'll start on the left. Jeff, do you want to start?
My name is Jeff Lemire, and my interest in the Parks and Recreation Commission stems from a background in college athletics. I spent 19 years in college athletics and have seen the impact that the outdoors and doing things as a group, but also what exercise can do for people and for a community. I also have a 5-year-old who loves going to the parks, and so I've seen the value of what the Palo Alto parks can do for people. I think the parks here are tremendous, and after reading through the proposed master plan, I'm very excited to be part of this commission and try to see some of these initiatives through.
I'm Don McDougall. I've recently been on the Library Commission and I'm very happy to be now on the Parks and Recreation Commission. My interest is more associated with the habitat, the baylands, the foothills. I'm heavily involved with environmental volunteers. We take kids on hikes into the baylands and into the foothills as well. I'm involved with Audubon, and I'm involved with Point Lobos as a docent, so the natural habitat is my interest, and we have such a wealth of that in the city.
I'm Ann Cribbs, and this is my second year on the commission, so I'm one of the old guys, I guess, now, and really looking forward to working with all the new commissioners, so I'm happy to take this time to welcome everybody. As for background, I'm an Olympian from 1960, a 35-year resident of Palo Alto, raised my kids here, played in the parks here, worked for recreation at one time, and absolutely love recreation and working on this commission. It was so exciting to do the master plan and looking forward to getting it all approved.
Okay, I'm Keith Ruckdahl. I am now starting my 5th year as Parks and Rec. And I joined 5 years ago just because growing up with my kids or raising my kids, the park system was such an important part of our family life. And I wanted to make sure that that kept on the high quality of the Palo Alto parks everyone else could enjoy. David.
I'm David Moss. This is the beginning of my 2nd year, and like my 2 predecessors, I have been here for 30-plus years, and my wife and son are out there. The 5 of us have used the parks forever, and we still use them all the time. And like Don, we are especially appreciative of the open spaces, and we'll do everything we can to promote them and to protect them.
I'm Jeff Greenfield. I'm a new commissioner. I have interests across the Parks and Rec spectrum. I've been a Palo Alto resident for 19 years. Have a couple daughters. My younger daughter's a sophomore in high school now at Gunn. I've been a longtime member of the local soccer community, board member and past president of the Palo Alto Adult Soccer League. I've been a youth coach and referee. I'm refereeing high school games now in soccer. Also very interested in the outdoor side of things. I hike regularly in the local open spaces. Foothills Park, Los Trancos Trail is my favorite. Can't wait till it's open again. It's going to be a while. I also volunteer regularly with Canopy, and I'm working with Grassroots Ecology on some invasive species removal at Foothills as well. So interested in a lot of different things and excited to be a part of this.
Hello, I'm Adrian Fine, just a neighborhood kid who turned into city council and grew up in our parks here and always loved them and the trails and the ways to get around the city. So I'm really interested to serve with all of you and learn what you think our city could do and the opportunities and the wonderful benefits we have here. A lot of folks have mentioned our open space, and that's absolutely vital and just so great about Palo Alto. There's also just interesting like urban interfaces too, and I just love to see like what our Parks and Rec is capable of in this city compared to many others.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Rob DeGose. I'm the Director of Community Services, the department for which Parks and Recreation falls, among other things, and we'll talk a little more about the department later. But congratulations and to all of you, and Keith for returning, and I'm glad you're back on, because we've got a lot of new folks here. But it's a real privilege to work with all of you. I think one of the most exciting things about working in Palo Alto, I find actually, is working closely with the residents of Palo Alto. They're so engaged and so interested in what we do and passionate. And all the places you could choose to volunteer or serve, this is by far the best one right here.
Right.
The most impactful, the most fun. And you got these two who are really great individuals, Kristen and Darren. So.
Thank you, Rob. Well, good evening and welcome. I'm Kristen O'Kane. I'm an Assistant Director of the Community Services Department, overseeing parks, recreation, open space, and golf. And I've been with the city just a little bit over a year and working on with the Parks and Rec Commission during that whole time. So I'm really excited to get to know all of you and work with all of you. We have some really exciting things coming up this year, and we're looking forward to working with all of you on those. So thank you for being here.
Hi, my name is Darren Anderson. I'm the Division Manager for Open Space, Parks, and Golf. It's been my privilege since 1999 to help serve and protect and enhance the open space and parks. And the love of my life is taking care of open space and parks. And I'm looking forward to working with you to keep making it better and better. So thanks so much for letting me work with you.
Okay, so now we'll move on to the election of the chair. The chair every week meets with, or talks, at least on the phone, with, now it'll be Kristen, back in the old days it was Rob, to look at the agenda and figure out what we want to talk about and what are we ready to talk about and what we need to bump to next week. You may have to interface with other groups, whether it be the council members or other ad hocs, and accumulate all the information that we want to present to the public and get that in about a week ahead of time, and then so the packet can be released. And then during the meeting, the commissioner, or the chair runs the meeting and organizes both the speakers from the public and also the speakers within the council, within the commission. Okay, so now we are opening up the floor for nominations. You can nominate yourself. We are, go ahead.
I'd like to nominate Commissioner Rechdel
Oh,
for a number of reasons, but certainly because of your experience over the past 5 years, because I know you've been a very good steward of the commission, have had a lot of experience in the work that we've done, and I would feel very comfortable with you as the leader this year. And I know we haven't talked about this, so.
thank you. I would be interested. I was commissioner, or it was chair 2 years ago, and it was a reasonable amount of work, but it was worthwhile. So I would be willing to do that again.
I nominate Ann Cribbs for vice chair.
Oh, we first vote on chair first.
Okay.
Okay. Any other nominations? Okay. Failing that, we will now vote for chair. Okay. Cap there? Okay.
Slightly redundant.
That's it. Yeah, that's done.
Six for Rechdel for chair.
Excellent.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I was nervous about that one. Okay, so the next action is to nominate people for vice chair. Do I hear any nominations?
I would like to nominate Ann Cribbs for vice chair. She has been involved in this group for over a year, and even before that. And she has always been very fair and honest and not afraid to give her opinion, and I think that she would be an excellent vice chair.
Commissioner Cribbs, are you interested in being vice chair?
Well, I'm actually interested in knowing if David would like to serve in that capacity. I think that would be a good idea this year as I seek to get used to my new shoulder. Thank you very much.
Okay. Okay, so
Okay.
David does accept the nomination. Any other nominations for vice chair? Okay, failing that, we will vote for vice chair.
6 for David Moss for Vice Chair.
Okay, congratulations, David.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
One of the things that's nice about the Parks Commission is that it's very flat. The commission, the chair and the vice chair do not do the majority of the work. It really is spread out quite a bit. So all the newbies will have to, like it or not, be relied on to do a lot of work.
And speaking of that, could we ask that Jeff move trade places so that he's not so far away from all of us?
Yeah.
Since there's a person in there that's not here. Would-
Do we know, is Ryan, he's not able to make it? Yeah, move in, please, and so we are more intimate here.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Are we planning the retreat this month and then upcoming month, or is it after the next meeting?
We'll talk about that when we, at the end of the agenda, but we do need to pick a retreat date today.
Okay. Will we do a doodle poll, or will we try to do it tonight?
We can try to do it tonight.
Okay, we'll give it a shot and see how
Yeah.
people's schedules are. In the past, sometimes if we have scheduling problems or people don't know their schedules, Kat will send out a doodle poll, and then we will figure out the date, but a bird in the hand is always better. Okay. Okay, because one important thing that we want to do is get assignments for the ad hocs. We have ad hoc committees here, and because of the Brown Act, we can't have a majority, but we can have 2 or 3 people go together and study an issue and talk with staff and work, gather facts and then assemble those facts and present it as a time-saving measure for us. And a lot of those ad hocs, that's where the work is really done, is the, go ahead, David.
Yeah, for the newcomers, that was a real education, was at that retreat, understanding all the committees that have, subcommittees that have already been created, and really deciding what area you want to focus on, bearing in mind that you really have to deal with all of the areas, but there are some that you can focus on, and there's a lot to be done, especially since we've got this huge master plan that has a lot of work to be done, and so we have to carve it up into some meaningful chunks. So I encourage everybody to come to the retreat.
Yeah, sometimes people can't make the retreat, which is a shame, because we really do get a lot of work done during the retreat. It's also good just to get in a different environment. Do we think it's going to be in Foothill this year, or do we know, or is it down in?
We haven't discussed
Okay.
logistics yet.
Yeah, the trade-off is up at Foothill is a different environment. It's a little more relaxed, but it's also more of a schlep up there. So it's the trade-off. Okay, moving down to new business. Next is new commissioner orientation. Kristen is going to give us an orientation, which sounds actually something I wish that would have been done 4 years ago.
Yeah, Chair Reckdale, I thought I'd just kick this off real briefly here. Again, Rob DeGhost, Director of the Department. And as we talked about this first meeting with a lot of new commissioners, we thought it would be good to take a little bit of time to talk about the department and what's all involved with the department, specifically related to parks, recreation, open space, and the golf course. And so we've prepared a presentation, or Kristen really has done the presentation. She'll go through that and allow you to ask some questions that you might have. And then secondly, we'll talk about the master plan, probably the biggest project we've worked on for the last couple of years. So with regard to the department, I also would say getting out and doing a tour with the staff is a good thing. We do a lot, and we're all over town. And just getting out with Kristen or Darren and walking some of the trails and talking about some of the issues that we're going to be facing or talking about as policy matters is just a great way to get to know the park system and the recreation system. So I encourage you to do that. But the Department of Community Services, the presentation will focus mostly on parks and recreation, but it goes beyond that. We have a dedicated art center, as you know, a dedicated children's theater, junior museum and zoo. We have 3 theaters. It's a large department. There's 80 full-time staff and several hundred part-time staff. Depending on the season, that can get as high as 300. I like to think that anyone that's working in this field, you couldn't work in a better place than Palo Alto. And the reason for that is because of people like you all, but for decades and decades, councils and commissions have dedicated time and energy and resources toward dedicating parkland and investing in facilities like an arts center and a junior museum. And so we've got these amazing assets to work with. And the focus for this commission, though, really is in parks, open space, and recreation. And the focus of the commission is really policy-oriented. And I think that's important to understand and appreciate, that it's commission's advisory to council and helping staff as we come across challenges sometimes where there's competing interests of community members, and we're trying to figure out how do we best either create access or other issues, that there may be a policy issue that comes to play. That's where the commission is really important for us and for the council. So with that, I will add again, I think you're very fortunate to have Kristen and Darren as your guides as a commission, because they really do a fantastic job. But Kristen, I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you. And before I start, I did fail to introduce our two staff to my right, who we couldn't do any of this without them. So do you want to quickly introduce yourselves?
I'm Catherine Borkwin. I've been an assistant to the Parks and Rec Commission since 2002. I've been with the city for going on 27 years. And so now I'm handing it over to Tanya, but I'll be her backup, so she won't be alone.
Hello, my name is Tanya Shornack, and I've been working for the city for the past 4 years, and my husband and his dad grew up in Palo Alto, and I'm now raising my daughter in Palo Alto as well. And we are big fans of the Baylands and Foothills Park.
So you may receive quite a few emails, probably from Tanya. If we receive correspondence from the public, they may come from Tanya directly as opposed to me. So just so you know, good to put a face to the name. So on that note, I'll start just a orientation, like Rob said, on the department, focusing on parks, recreation, open space, and golf. The mission of our department is to engage individuals and families in creating a strong and healthy community through parks, recreation, social services, arts, and sciences. And we have 5 different divisions within the department: administration, open space, parks, and golf, of which Darren is the division manager, recreation, human services, and arts and sciences. So this is just an overview of our administration division, with Rob being the lead. And I am on the top there, assistant director, along with Darren alongside me. And then Raina Halpern, you may see her once in a while throughout the year. She's the other assistant director overseeing arts and sciences, as well as so the Art Center, Public Art Program, the Junior Museum, and Zoo. And then we also have a strategy and operations team who does a lot of our analyst work and budget management. So I'm going to turn the next slide over to Darren.
Yeah, I'll just share a little bit about open space and parks and golf. So we have 4,000 acres of open space, which is really special and unique, and it's due to foresight and vision on behalf of our council from many years back, where they had the idea of preserving these areas when other people were still using them as landfills. So we're really grateful to have it. This 4,000 acres is spread over Foothills Park, Baylands Nature Preserve, Pearson Rasodero, and Esther Clark Park. It's one of those seldomly used open space areas that we're looking forward to doing something with when we do our comprehensive plan FY19 for that area. So more to come on that, I hope. We've got 43 miles of hiking trail And it's a challenge to take care of it. We're doing the best we can. As Commissioner Greenfield pointed out, we've got one trail right now partially closed because of the storm. We're actively working on fixing it. We've got 32 neighborhood parks with 174 acres. There's 30 playgrounds within those parks, a lot of assets. At one point, we tallied every single one of our sprinkler heads that our irrigation team goes out and manages. But the point is, there's just a tremendous number of assets for people to enjoy, and we get to take care of. And lastly, we've got our Alto golf course, which should be fully renovated and back open for business in October, November this year. We're excited about that. Fun fact, 9 out of every 10 residents has been to one of our parks. On this next slide, we have some of the assets broken down. I already mentioned that we've got the 30 playgrounds, but basketball courts, tennis courts, sports fields, that's 32 sports fields. Some of those include the PAUSD fields as well. 39 different picnic areas, the 2 pools, 3 dog parks. Hopefully we'll be adding another one very soon with your help. And the other, we've got the 3 interpretive centers at Foothills Park, Baylands, and Pearson Arrastadero. And the other fun fact, one we've been working on increasing, but we've got 93% of our residents that are satisfied with the quality of Palo Alto's parks. And we're shooting to increase that.
Thanks, Darren. So recreation services, this is quite a large division within our department, and it includes our 3 community centers, all of which are very different. The Cubberley Community Center is the city only owns 8 acres of that entire site. The rest of the site we lease from the Palo Alto Unified School District, but we operate it as the community center. And we also use the fields for various community events. We have the Mitchell Park Community Center, which includes the Teen Center, and Lucy Stern Community Center, which is actually under renovation right now and should be back open in the actually April 1st or 2nd. So our recreation has quite a few programs, classes for the community. We have an aquatics program that operates year-round. We also have adult fitness programs, our recreation programs, as well as our summer camp program, which is very popular, and we're kicking that off really soon. I'm sure you're all aware of the process called the draw, where people put in their requests for summer camps, and it's a lottery as to which camps they get selected to participate in. We also have numerous teen programs, many of which are operated out of Mitchell Park Community Center. And then the Recreation Division also plans and manages many of the city's special events, so the May Fete Parade, the Chili Cook-Off, there's an Earth Day festival that we're participating in coming up in April, so a lot of events that we also manage through recreation. And there's some facts, fun facts, as Darren says, on the bottom of this slide as well. So 84% of residents rated recreation classes positively, and 81% rated recreation centers or facilities in a positive light. So there's 2 other divisions within the department that I'm going to talk about very briefly. Our Human Services Division, which provides resources for the community. A lot of our partners in the Human Services Department are listed here on this slide. These are either groups that Human Services works with directly or receives grant funding through this division. And then Arts and Sciences, as Rob mentioned earlier, we have the Palo Alto Art Center, the Public Art Program, theaters, the Cubberley Artist Studios, as well as the Junior Museum and Zoo. And I wanted to mention that a lot of what we do, we do with our partners. I mean, pretty much everything we do. We can't do it alone. We do it with other city departments as well as other commissions. So the Parks and Rec Commission is one, and probably the most frequently, obviously, commission that we partner with, but we also will work with the Human Relations Commission as well as the Public Art Commission. There's also 3 Friends of groups that we work with frequently, as well as the Palo Alto Recreation Foundation and the Palo Alto Art Center Foundation. And of course, we couldn't do it without the members of the community. As Rob mentioned, the community is why we're here, but they're also a big part of helping us proceed with our projects and advance our projects. So I wanted to go a little bit into community services by the numbers. So Rob mentioned we have about 82 full-time staff, but we have hundreds of hourly staff, many of which are hired just in the summer months. But we really rely on our hourly staff to just get our work done and to keep our programs operating. The department has an annual operating budget of about $25 million. And our revenue for fiscal year 17 is projected to be almost $6 million. Our annual capital budget on average is about $2.1 million. And then this slide just breaks down our operating budget by division. So you can see that open space, parks and golf this year is about $8.9 million. That the golf course, as you know, is under construction right now, so that number is a little bit deceiving because of that. And then our recreation division operating budget is about $6.6 million. So this slide I'm just going to touch on at a very high level. We'll go into this in more detail at our retreat. When we do the retreat, we'll talk a lot about what we'll be doing in 2017, and as Commissioner Moss and Commissioner Rectal said, we'll be putting together a lot of ad hoc committees that will help staff advance these projects and programs forward. So just briefly, these are some high-level things, some big policies and programs and park improvements that will be coming your way at some time, probably in 2017. So the Parks, Trails, Open Space, and Recreation Master Plan, I'm going to go a little bit into quite a bit more detail on that in the next presentation. We're getting close to wrapping that one up, very, very close, but it's just right there. We're almost there. We'll also be doing some master planning for the Cubberley Community Center. As I mentioned, we own 8 acres of that, and we've been working with the school district to think about what we might want to do with that property in the future, either the city in itself or in partnership with the school district. We also are kicking off a Baylands Comprehensive Conservation Plan, and also there's a 10.5 acre site within the Baylands, at the Baylands Athletic Center, that is a site that we need to look at and determine what the best opportunities for that site are moving forward. We also have a 36.5 acre piece of property within the Baylands that was the former ITT property that the city now has full ownership of. And so again, that's a site that we need to look at, how we're going to manage that site, what we're going to do with it moving forward. We also have some changes coming in our aquatics program, and also there's a Buckeye Creek hydrology study that Darren's been working with a consultant on, and so that's something that will be coming probably actually next month, I believe. And then there's also various park improvements that will be coming your way, a new dog park, possibly a park restroom. There's a 7.7 acre parcel up at Foothills Park that, again, we are in a stage where we need to identify what the best use of that site is. Also, the Junior Museum and Zoo is going to be rebuilt, and that is located within Rinconada Park. So that will require a park improvement ordinance. And there's also possibly some pickleball discussions coming your way. And Commissioner Cribbs is very excited about that. And then there could be some other park improvement ordinances coming your way as well. So there's a lot of exciting things, big sort of master planning efforts underway and kicking off that will definitely need the Commission's input on. So the next part of this presentation, I'm shifting a little bit, and Rob and I thought we would talk about the commissioner's role within the city process and also responsibilities. So the commission is an advisory body to council, and the intent is for that advice to be on policy-related issues, specific to, of course, parks, recreation, open space, and golf. So I have 3 examples here, and we're going to go through these examples to show what staff's role is, what the commission's role, and council's role in these different examples. So do you want to kick off this field and tennis court use policy, Rob?
So this is an interesting one. It's related to athletic fields and parks and access to the parks and who gets to use them. And let me before I even get into that, these policy matters can come up in a variety of ways. A lot of times they'll come up through staff. I mean, that we're trying to be good stewards of recreation and park assets and want to be sure that the community has inclusive and full access, but there's some type of competing interest of the community. And really don't want to resolve that on our own. We need to resolve that sort of with the community, and that's partly the commission's role, is then to help us sort of think through the trade-offs of, one course or the other. But sometimes it'll come from the city council. The city council will see an issue or hear an issue and then ask the commission, could you look into this a little deeper, because the council's got a million things going on, and so you can dive in that way. And that'll happen from time to time. Other times the commissioners themselves will, you're out in the community, sort of eyes are open, ears are open to sort of all issues related to Parks and Rec because you're engaged and involved, and you'll hear policy-related issues that you'll bring forward for discussion. In any case, this particular one, access to athletic fields, came to us from a lot of different angles. I think the commission heard about it. We certainly heard about it, Strickland. I think even the council did. And we have a great park system, but we are a very built-out community, and we have a very athletic citizenry, actually, here in Palo Alto. And we have a lot of sports being played, a lot of clubs, kids playing as young as 3 years old. A lot of adults and seniors wanting access to athletic fields. We have a great balance of gender on our fields, which is fantastic. But we're also dealing with new sports entering into sort of the area. We recently have people wanting to play cricket and want us to have, I'm a little partial to that, being from Australia. I think no, I'm kidding. But lacrosse is starting to get big, and other sports like that, pickleball. And then we have sports now not being seasonal, but being year-round. Soccer is not fall, it's every year, and baseball all year-round. And so, in any case, we're faced with this, okay, how do we balance the interests of all of the different folks that want to have access to the fields? And we know that we can't give everybody space fully, equally, or certainly to the extent that they want it. What is an appropriate criteria for allocating the space throughout the year? And, against children versus adults, and, the different neighborhoods, and even parks themselves, they're not all equal, we discovered, right? Some parks and athletic fields are close to neighbors, where we've got neighbors right up against the athletic fields, where other fields are away from the neighborhood and actually can sustain more play. We have synthetic turf versus artificial, regular grass. So this was a really good example, I think, where the commission played an integral role in helping staff figure out how we might develop a set of guidelines and policy for the council to consider to allocate space in a reasonable way. Not that everybody gets everything they want, but that is, appreciates all of the different trade-offs and interests. It's not perfect, but it's a good example where I think we were able to develop a pretty extensive policy that's easy to understand, bring it to council, and they were They then approve that, and we check in on that policy every few years. So we thought this was a good example. Again, it sort of goes through this process of identifying the policy issue at hand. Staff will often do some pre-work for the commission so that you have something to sort of react to and respond to. But it goes back and forth, and often with the commission and staff, and more often than not, we decide that we need to talk to the community and have a meeting, a public meeting or a forum or something, and we'll have an ad hoc committee maybe that'll do some extra work on the side. And once staff and the commission most often come to alignment in what we think is an appropriate policy recommendation, then it will go to council for review. And sometimes council will say, thank you, but we're going to go in a different direction, and that's their authority. But more often than not, they're really interested in what the commission has done and the thinking of the commission, and it weighs heavily on their deliberation and decision. But sometimes it'll come back.
This graphic is nice, but
yeah,
I wish it was that simple in this particular case, because in real life, we bounced around between those top two boxes for a long time, including the ad hoc and having public input. And we really, because we didn't know the right answer, and staff didn't know the right answer, and we had to really work back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it took us months to figure out what we thought was a good solution and made the public happy.
I think that's a really good point. We want it to be simple so it can be understood, but it is more complicated than that. One thing we talked about even just this afternoon is what's not very obvious here, but is that the community engagement is throughout this process, at every step of the way. And the commission's always had this perspective, and I think staff has too, tries very hard to think about it, and it's not an easy answer always. What is in the best interest of Palo Alto residents, where you get 66,000 residents with lots of different interests. So trying to navigate, all of the different data sources and so on, and come up with a recommendation for what is truly in the best interests of residents as a whole is challenging at times, but certainly impossible unless you really talk to the community.
One of the things I didn't appreciate is I thought people just cared about slots. And it's just not slots. They wanted priority because, for example, they wanted to cluster them together. They wanted all the careers at one time so the refs could go from game to game and parents could go from game to game, and it makes a lot of sense. But we were doing it with a lottery system, so you would do one field at a time. And it made it hard. And in retrospect, we should have thought of that. But in the end, we got something that made people happy.
So in this case, the commission's role is to review the policy, where staff writes the policy, drafts it. The commission would review it. Like Commissioner Rectal said, it may go in cycles where it goes back to staff for revision, and that may happen a few times. And then the commission doesn't actually approve the policy. The commission would review it and then recommend to council that council approves the policy. So I'm going to move on to the next example, which is the master plan. And again, I know this makes it look really simple. It went this smoothly, didn't it? So in this case, staff did, along with a consultant, a lot of the data collection, community outreach, drafted the goals, policies, and programs, and prepared the master plan in and of itself. Now there is a master plan, or there was a master plan ad hoc who contributed quite a bit outside of commission meetings. We sat together, staff and the ad hoc group, and wordsmithed policies just to get them just right. So there is that level of detail that occurs. But for the commission in overall, the role was to review the goals, policies, and programs, provide input, ensure that those policies are reflective of the community's needs and desires, and also reviewed the master plan, and then eventually recommends to council that council adopt the master plan. In this one, we did include the arrows that show that it's a cycle, that it went around quite a few times, as well with council. So we've been to council many times with the master plan at various stages, requesting input, and then that goes back to staff. And
As long as there is an exit ramp eventually.
yeah, as long as, yeah, it's not a continuous infinite loop, that's our goal. So then city council provides feedback, like I said, and ultimately would adopt the plan. So again, this is an example where the commission is the advisory body to council, where the commission has reviewed the master plan, has worked with staff throughout the process, and then gets to a point of being comfortable with the master plan to recommend to council that council adopt the master plan. And then it goes back to staff for implementation. And then we know that continues on. As we start to implement the master plan, there are going to be times where we come back to the commission as well as council to approve or recommend approval of specific items that come out of the master plan. But really, I wanted to focus that the commission's role here was to help with the policy piece of that and also advise council on their acceptance of the master plan. And one thing that we added to this slide was on the left side, there's that bar that says community. This is an example where the community and a specific stakeholder group has been involved all along the way, because this master plan is really by the community and for the community.
The dog park example that we're going to go through has a similar process as the others, in that staff and usually an ad hoc from the commission will work an issue. Unfortunately, we've been stuck in those first two boxes now for many, many years, unfortunately. But we've made good headway. With our last ad hoc committee, there were two commissioners working with me directly, putting in a lot of effort, especially tied to our endeavor on the Parks Master Plan. And with that bigger outreach that was connected to the master plan, I think we've got a good way forward. We've held some public meetings recently. Again, that's part of that box one, is reaching out to the community. And I think there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we're ready to move on to that, the second and third boxes, where we can come back to the commission soon. I'll be a little later tonight asking you to reform that ad hoc committee and ask for a couple commissioners to help me work this issue a little bit more. Hopefully come back next month to the full commission, have a robust discussion. And then the following month, you see that little note, prepares PIO, and that's called Park Improvement Ordinance. And anytime the city does, or there's any construction or fundamental change in a park, you're required to do this ordinance that ultimately has to be approved by council. So we'll build some consensus with our ad hoc, come back, discuss it in March. If everything goes well, I bring you a draft Park Improvement Ordinance in April, and you'll take a vote on that and decide whether you'd like to recommend that move on to council for their approval. At that point, after council reviews it, and if they decide to approve it, there's a certain waiting period, and then we're allowed to construct that dog park. So I'm really looking forward to working with you on this one.
And then that concludes our presentation, and we're here to answer questions. If anyone has questions on all that information we just threw at you. So any questions?
Well, I really like the presentation. Thank you very much for putting it together. And I'm wondering if you're posting it any place?
We could post it. I can also email it.
Emailing would be good, but for the sort of the broader picture, maybe there's some things that are unique to the commission, but just in terms of information about Palo Alto, it's another way of putting out communication.
Yeah, we could post it on the commission's website.
Yeah, be nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was very nice. I wish I had that 4 years ago, because it does give you a bigger picture. One thing that we did was we did the tour with Rob. Are you going to try and schedule that with the new commissioners? You'll just do that via email and find a time that's good?
If anyone would like a tour of, I know Darren, I started, I think, when Commissioner Cribbs and Commissioner Moss started, and I was on their tour as well. Right. Darren is a great tour guide, so just let us know, and we'd be happy to take you on a tour.
I have one comment, and that is that it's incredible to work with your staff, and I found that last year things went really, really smoothly. And I also, with the council, you pretty much sheltered us from the council, and I appreciate that. But I hope that we can continue to have a smooth working relationship with the council, so that things move as quickly as possible, and that we're not off in a vacuum doing our own thing. So we're relying on our representative here to keep us honest, and you people as well. So because, as you mentioned, we really have no power, we just advise, and so we want to make sure that our work is useful.
So thank you for that, Vice Chair. I think it's in some ways the other way around, that you guys should keep us honest. And it'd be so helpful if this commission filters up information. I really appreciate staff's presentation coming from Planning Commission. It seems like you guys have a much better process actually laid out about how things work here and how the commission and staff work together and move things forward. So I think that efficiency is really valued. I would say, people do say that these commissions are advisory, but if you hear something in the community, it doesn't have to be policy related. Filter that up, because that matters, right? And layering that information is really helpful.
On page 9, when it lists the partners, does it make sense, coming from the Library Commission, does it make sense to include the library as a partner? It seems to me that you do things in conjunction with them, or is that a conflict? Or
It's certainly a partner, part of the city, of course, but our department and libraries are increasingly working more closely together, actually, and certainly you see that at Mitchell Park, where we're right next door.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Don, as you know, being our Commissioner McDougall, having been on the Library Commission, libraries are going through a transformation about who they are, and it's a whole lot more than books, and it's a lot more like community services and gathering spaces. And so it's really, I actually think it's an exciting time for libraries and community services to think about how we can collaborate and work together.
Yeah, I do too. I think it would be worth calling out to call our attention to. I think it's a real opportunity. The thing that, a different question, the thing that the Library Commission does is they assign what they call council buddies to individual commissioners. And sometimes it really works well. I had a relationship with Mark Berman that was really good. Sometimes it doesn't work so well. But it was a way of reinforcing and making a connection. I think I am very pleased that we have Councilmember Fine as our delegate. But some plan like that, it turned out to be useful, because we also had the council representative as well.
I'd be interested in hearing more about that, maybe after the meeting.
Thanks, Kristen.
There are a couple more things I wanted to mention. If you look at the agenda for tonight, for example, we have action items and we also have just discussion items. And so when we put together the agenda ahead of time, we have to know, are we just going to talk about this, or is there going to be some vote? And if we want to have some binding vote, that, for example, sending our recommendation to the council, we have to ahead of time put that down as an action item. So sometimes we put down a discussion item, and then halfway through the discussion we say, oh, we want to tell the council this, and we have to put that off to next week. So keep in mind when you look at the agenda that when it says action or discussion, that actually means something. And we also have to post this, what's the requirement, 7 days in advance? 72 hours in advance. So we usually go for a Thursday morning to get it done. So if you at the last minute have some, if you're an ad hoc and you have some data, you can bring it and distribute it, make copies and give it to the public and then hand it out at the meeting, but we prefer to have it 72 hours in advance so it can be part of the packet that goes out to the website. And then finally, the last thing is Brown Act. Do you want to say a few words about the Brown Act? Or
We thought we would get into that at the retreat. And
Okay.
get into those.
I mean, and the short answer is that you can't have a meeting outside of a meeting. And you can talk to one or two people, but you have to be careful that they don't talk to one or two people because that becomes a serial chain. But so that's something to be aware of for new commissioners.
I had one more comment based on what Don just said, and that is one of the things I realized in this past year is how many different stakeholder groups are interested in our work. They certainly come out of the woodwork. It's absolutely made dozens and dozens and dozens of stakeholder groups. And I don't know how you keep it all straight, but when you had that bar over there that said community, you're not just talking to individuals, you're talking to groups that represent a whole lot of other individuals. And I think that's a really powerful concept, and we have to take full advantage of it. And so having that somehow on the slide, when we go through the Parks and Rec plan, some of those will start coming up, but going to any meetings with the public, you find out who they are. And that's, yeah.
One thing I just add to that is that I don't think I really got touched on is within the process is you're dealing with lots of groups of stakeholders, and they often have competing interests. And part of the magic of the process is getting the stakeholders with competing interests to work together and sort out priorities and compromises themselves and kind of do the heavy lifting with the group and then hand the answer forward. And I think that's certainly an approach that is worth modeling and works well and keep it in mind.
Just on the Brown Act question, I know that staff has putting together a manual for each of the commissioners that has a lot of background, a lot of information about the Brown Act and some of the sort of rules around Robert's orders. There's also training that the city provides annually on conflict of interest and Brown Act. So we'll let you know when that happens. It usually happens here, that you can attend. We also, of course, have a city attorney's office, so if you have questions about sort of legality of, if anything, work through staff, and we can get you in touch with our attorney's office.
Yeah, the most dangerous part, I think, is when you're in an ad hoc and you have 2 or 3 people working on that, you have to be very disciplined not to talk to someone else. And sometimes you know that someone has worked on something and I want some advice for this. You have to be very careful that it doesn't end up breaking into a bigger meeting that would violate the Brown Act. Okay, very good. We'll move on to the next. Parks, Trails, Natural Open Space and Recreation Master Plan. We'll have a discussion.
I'm going to just kick this off again, Chair Rector, real briefly before Kristen goes into the presentation. But I did want to say that this is probably the most significant work the Commission has worked on for the last 2 years or a little more. We talked about our process, very community-focused, and many stakeholders, and bringing them together and trying to find common interests takes a lot of time. But you end up with a better product at the end, but it does take time. And we're happy to have done that, but especially happy that we're at a point where we think we have a plan that it's not perfect, but we think it's pretty darn good and ready to get this in front of the council so we can really start working off the plan. And it really represents a vision for the future of parks, trails, and open space and recreation facilities. I think it's been a labor of love for prior commissioners and many community members and staff that's been engaged in this work. And it's intended to be a 20-year plan. And the last thing I'll say before I hand it over to Kristen, which I found sort of one of the most interesting and challenging parts of working on this and putting this together, which is not uncommon for any kind of master planning process, is trying to strike the right balance between aspiration and specificity so that it's providing sufficient guidance to actually be meaningful when you're faced with options. And we've tried to do that, and we spent a lot of time thinking about that, and I think we've got a good balance here, and I think it's sort of very relevant given the conversations around the comprehensive plan and how detailed do you go versus not, and it's a very difficult thing, actually, to do, and what is that? You can go too far one way, too prescriptive, and it's in some ways a snapshot in time because it's our understanding of conditions today and the environment today with the best information today, but we know tomorrow it'll be different, certainly next year it will be, and when it's a 20-year plan, a whole lot's going to change. And so how specific can you be with programs and other things? And on the other hand, you can easily go the other way too, where it's just too aspirational and anything goes, right? And you can make it fit anything, really, as long as you can be creative. And that doesn't work either. It's just a reality, I think, that we have to face with any master planning project, and recognizing that it'll never be 100% perfect, and it's in a lot of ways, and it ought to be, I think, a working document that we continue to work and refine throughout the term of the plan as we get new information and continue to work and discuss with the public where their interests lie. In any case, I think we've got a pretty good plan here. I'm really interested to hear the new commissioner's perspective once they have a chance to really take a look at it. Question?
So first, I'd like to apologize to the three commissioners who've heard this presentation ad nauseum and could probably give it as well. So thank you for sitting through it one more time. But this is a big program, a big master plan that we've spent considerable amount of time on, and we thought it would be good to provide some background. I wanted to also introduce to my right Peter Jensen. He's the city's landscape architect. He's in the Public Works Department, and he's been quite a contributor to this master plan and the process as well, so he's going to help me out with this presentation. But I will kick it off. So the purpose of the plan is to guide decision-making for future development of our system, parks, trails, natural open space, as well as recreation. So the elements of the system that this master plan cover are, just as I mentioned, parks, trails, and open spaces, recreation facilities, and recreation programs. And I'd like to point out the open space piece. The intent with this master plan is not to go into the conservation piece of our open spaces. That's being done separately in the conservation plans that we're working on, the Baylands being the first one that we're doing. It will only be the sort of developed part of the open spaces, so the picnic areas, restrooms, things like that. And then the last bullet there is recreation programs. There's sort of two components to this master plan. There's the what can we do to improve things that are more capital projects, and then there's also the programming side of it. So all of that is included in the master plan. So the process that we went through is really a three-phase process, the first being analysis and engagement. So we did quite a bit of technical analysis looking at what we have existing, where parks are in relation to where people live, how do people get to parks, what sort of natural environment exists within our parks. And then we also did considerable community engagement, so both online and in person, at different events, at specific community meetings. We gathered all of this information together, and we came up with what were our sort of needs and opportunities. What did we want to accomplish with our master plan? And then that led us into phase two. We used that information to develop some goals. And following those goals, we have some policies to help us achieve the goals, and then even further, we have programs to help us achieve the policies. And then the third phase is really how are we going to implement it, and then also just getting the master plan adopted. So I'm going to, kick it over to Peter right now.
New and old commissioners, good evening. Peter Jensen, landscape architect for the city of Palo Alto. I've been working on the Parks Master Plan with the staff here and with the commission before, and looking forward to working on it with you as well. Going to review with you the first few chapters of the Master Plan report. The report itself is broken into 5 different chapters. The first 3 focus on the early aspects of the master planning process, the actual analysis and community engagement that went into getting the feedback and information that we needed to really start to create the master plan itself. So as Kristen said, the phase 1 was a proactive community engagement process. It had a comprehensive inventory and analysis of all the parks and open spaces, looking at the physical conditions and the elements in the parks that we had. And then it is the basis of chapters 1 through 3 of the master plan. And I'm going to say, as the presentation before talked about community engagement, the community has been engaged throughout the entire process, as well as the commission itself, even starting with the initial request for proposal that went out and delving into it at that stage. So the commission has been a kind of a key factor along with the community of putting the master plan together. Phase 1 also included then, once we had the analysis work, is looking at opportunities. What were the opportunities to enhance or make the system better, both for parks, open spaces, and for programming as well. So it shouldn't be lost that the master plan, not only looking at physical aspects and facilities, but also looking at the program aspects of it. Out of that analysis, there's a series of slides here that looks at different park search areas is the first one. This basically is looking at the city of Palo Alto. You can see kind of in the blue areas is where we're lacking parkland. That's a distance away from walking. So these would be the areas that we would start to focus if we were add amenities or to add parkland. These would be places to look at. This slide then pops up and you can see that the areas do then have different aspects of them as well. So you can see that I believe that's E down there at the bottom has the highest population density. One of them has higher population and then the lowest. So these kind of geographic analysis start to help us understand where we should start to provide more funding for more enhancement to our park system. The next 2 slides, this one and the next one is very similar. I start to route different connections between the parks themselves and link the park systems. Not only should the parks be thought of as just one standalone entity, but trying to connect those entities so they become a more vast and broader system, especially in Palo Alto, where our city is pretty much built out and it's hard to produce parkland. The idea of then connecting the parkland and providing those clear links together is a main aspect of optimizing the space that we have. This does that in the same way, but it starts to look at the natural systems and then along those major connection points also establishing some type of environment, either extending the park along the streetscape, planting native trees along these routes that can connect habitat to each of the parks. So this is another geographic analysis to look at to understand how the actual full park system links together. So in the analysis, again, there was the key findings from the community. Community engagement, we did a lot of different types of that. Intercept groups, meeting people out in the parks. We did multiple surveys, community meetings, of course the PRC meetings that we had, council updates. So there was a lot of engagement with the community to get feedback on what the really park system needed. And then of course the technical assessment was all the assessment of our physical aspects that we have in our park system. That led to the needs and opportunities, and then finally distilled down to a part that we did work on for a while. When you have that much analysis done and that much information, there is a lot of information, and how you distill those things down into what we really want to focus on and the enhancements and improvements that we want to make in our park system. And that led us to the development of these areas of focus. So there's 12 of them altogether. These areas of focus represent those things that we want to concentrate on to enhance the system. They were also used as an aspect of a community survey to get feedback on what the community felt were the top areas of focus to look at. When we start to talk about what is recommended and what has high priority, those things all come with a price tag, of course, so not everything is free being built. Most of it is very expensive, so those areas of focus then help us narrow down how we want to, not only how we want to recommend, but how we want to spend the funding that we have. The phase 2 is the goals policies. It starts out with the development of the principles, and the principles are the 8 principles represent the collective direction provided by the community. It's building on our assets, our vision of basically the future and what we'd like to have and see for our park system. So you can see there that they are, this is a broader aspect of what our aspirations are of the park system. So as we narrow it down to then the goals and the policies and the programs, they each become more specific along the way until you do get to programs that lead you to doing specific projects or adding specific programs. Along with the principles, in the next phase was developing the goals. There are 6 goals altogether. These are very important in how the framework of the master plan is formatted. The goals, like the comprehensive plan that is being redrafted at the time, this follows the same structure as our city overall comprehensive plans, where we do have a set of goals, and off those goals we build on policies and programs that guide future development. These 6 goals then are to provide high quality facilities and services that are accessible, inclusive, and distributed equally across Palo Alto, enhance the capacity, quality, and variety of the use of existing systems of the park, recreation, open facilities, and services. Goal number 3 is to create environments that encourage regular activity and passive activities to support health, wellness, and social connections. Goal number 4 is to preserve and integrate nature, natural systems, and ecological principles throughout Palo Alto. Goal 5, to develop innovative programs, services, and strategies for expanding the system. And Goal 6, which deals with a lot about how we maintain our system and make that more efficient, is manage Palo Alto's land and services effectively and sustainably, which is also very important, using quantitative and qualitative measures. So not only trying to do that, but also setting up parameters that we can understand if we're meeting those goals, and what the quality of us meeting those goals are, and how we quantitative that we're meeting them. As I said before, that leads us then to policies and programs, which again is the same kind of basis that our city comprehensive plan is set up on. So there are the 6 goals. Under each one of those 6 goals is a policy, and under each one of those policies is a program. So as you go down into the programs where you start to get into specific projects or expanding the system. Those are kind of the main ideas that you can enact on to enhance the system itself. And of course, I think also in the last presentation, there are some very unique opportunity sites in Palo Alto that either require further study or just require more sensitivity because of their natural systems. Of course, Bayland Community Center, or the Cubberley Community Center, is a large one, and as Kristen pointed out earlier, that's going to start going under its kind of own master planning process. The Baylands Athletic Center, which is a new 10.5 acres parcel of land that was created when the golf course was redeveloped, which is very exciting. Like I said, it's very difficult to create new parkland in Palo Alto because of the way it's built out. The Baylands Nature Preserve, which has the new ITT property, which is another 36.5 acres that could eventually become part of the Baylands and will become part of the Baylands and restored that way. And of course, then the 7 acres at Foothills Park and what to do with that. So.
So then,
ITT is not dedicated yet?
Not yet.
And our plan is to rehabilitate it and then dedicate it, or dedicate it and then rehabilitate it?
Dedicated first.
Okay. And what time frame is that? Is that?
I'm hoping we get it next couple months.
Okay.
so phase 3 is the phase that we're in right now. It includes the final development of the final chapter, which was implementation, as well as review of the plan by council and adoption of the plan. It also includes California Environmental Quality Act review, which is something we didn't have included. We weren't clear that we needed to have that step completed for the plan, so we started that a little bit late. It's underway right now, and I'll be going through the schedule towards the end of this presentation. But so chapter 5, like I said, is implementation, and this was a difficult chapter for us to put together because there's a lot in the master plan, and like Rob said, it's aspirational. It's not necessarily, we're not necessarily going to complete everything in this plan. It would be nice if we could, but realistically, it's probably not feasible. Everything, like Peter says, does have a price tag associated with it, and so we need to go through that process annually to start to implement the master plan. So how we did that or how we do the prioritization process moving forward, we really struggled with that. But we have these 5 sort of criteria that we're looking at as we go through prioritization, and the first one is fill existing gaps. So for example, the map that we saw earlier where there's areas where there's high population density, but there isn't a park in walking or close proximity to residents, that is a gap that we might need to fill. Another might be a pool on the south side of Palo Alto, maybe a gap we need to fill. So all of these things are, we consider higher on the priority side. Also, responding to growth is a criteria, addressing community preferences, maximizing our public resources, so completing a project that might meet multiple benefits would allow us to use public resources more efficiently, which is the final bullet as well, realizing multiple benefits. We also list in the master plan in chapter 5 high priority projects and programs. These are ones that we learned through the process that are considered to be high priority. We know this, the commission agrees, the community agrees. So these are ones that we feel either need to be started and completed in the near term, or for longer process projects, for example, Coverly master planning, that's not something that can be done quickly, but we recognize that the process needs to start soon. These are all described in that chapter, as well as considerations like how much they will cost to plan, how much would they cost to implement, and also potential funding options is something that we've also included in this chapter. And then how we're going to evaluate future projects. So this is what we know today in the master plan, but there's going to be things that might come up that we don't even know about. And so when those do come up, how do we address those and how do we incorporate those into the master plan? And then finally, how do we report on our progress every year? So that's chapter 5 in a nutshell. And our final, like I said, we're really close to the finish line here. So we've done significant community review, and also the Parks and Rec Commission did review, and I have approval up there. I'll explain what I mean by that. But first I want to go quickly into the most recent online community review that we did. This was the draft master plan, the one that you have in your packets. It went in, out to the community for review in November and December, and we received responses from 82 people. 96% of the respondents were residents. And what we did is we gave them some questions to answer. Instead of making it an open forum for comments, we asked them specific questions. The first being which of the principles is most important to them. And what we were trying to accomplish here is just sort of circle back to the very beginning of the process and ensure that where we started and where we ended up, those still align. And what we found is that over half of the respondents felt that healthy was the most important principle that we had with the master plan. Sustainable and nature being the second and third. And this is really, it does align with what we've heard throughout the process, especially most recently when we've done community outreach. We also asked which of the goals are most important to them and should guide the city's implementation of this plan. The goals that received the most, the highest rating was Goal 3, which is supporting health, wellness, and social connections, and Goal 4, which is preserving and integrating nature and natural systems and environments within our parks and open space system. On December 14th, we came to the commission and we asked them these specific questions. They took action, and I will admit it's worded a bit odd, but the reason for that is because we don't have the CEQA piece done yet. So our legal advice from our city attorney was that the Parks and Rec Commission couldn't put their formal stamp on it without understanding what the environmental impacts of that could be. So the action that was taken was to accept the draft master plan as the embodiment of the programs and policies that are tentatively recommended by the Parks and Rec Commission, and then requesting that staff perform CEQA analysis, and that action was voted yes unanimously. So that's was the final step in the Parks and Rec Commission's role in the master plan as far as the goals, policies, and programs. And then back to this slide. So those first two steps are done. The CEQA review is underway, and we anticipate that the public review period will be March 20th to April 18th. And during that period of time, we will have a public hearing, and we anticipate that public hearing will be at the March Parks and Rec Commission meeting, which is March 28th. And then following that, we do have a council meeting where we are on the agenda. It's April 3rd, and this will be an action. It's similar to what we've had in the past, which were study sessions, but this one will be an action in that we're asking for the council to actually provide us comments that we would then act upon in the master plan. And this allows the council to, so sometimes what happens in council meetings is a council member will make a comment, but there isn't they don't close the loop on whether that's the council's direction to us to make that change. So this, by having an action, it allows that to happen. So we will know if council is agreeing on that change for the master plan. And then we're tentatively planning on council adoption on May 29th. Yes.
Okay, so Parks and Rec has to review it after the CEQA? Our final adoption. So our final adoption will be somewhere before 5/29.
Correct.
Okay.
Ideally, I would imagine it would be the April
meeting.
Parks and Rec Commission meeting.
Okay.
Chair Rector, if I could just,
Sorry, yes.
if I could just add one thing, just a thank you to the commission, and it's great to have Commissioner Krebs and Moss join the team and contributed a lot, I think, in this last year to get us to the end. And Chair Rector from the beginning, I think, right, has been there. But also a couple of commissioners that really carried a heavy load are not with us anymore, but just contributed really significantly. And that's Commissioner Jennifer Headley and Ed Lowing, who was chair for a couple of years. And they worked tirelessly, really, with staff and with the community and on ad hoc committees. And just a big thank you to all of you.
Not only a lot of work, but a lot of thoughtful work. They just didn't do the simple stuff. They thought about it and really tried to think what's the best way to attack this, and we were very grateful for that.
So if the CEQA review is not done before the council review, is that an issue? Will you have know enough about the CEQA review to let the council, to give the council enough information during their review?
Are you referring to the April 3rd meeting?
Yes, as opposed to April 18th, the end of the CEQA review.
Well, the meeting on April 3rd is really to have them provide feedback on the plan itself. So there's been changes made since the last council meeting, many of which were in response to council comments. So we'll be sharing those. And then they'll have the opportunity to review the CEQA piece at the May 29th meeting. So the CEQA component isn't required for the April meeting. They're really looking at the master plan as it is written, not what the potential environmental effects could be.
I don't have any CEQA experience. Are they going to come back and actually change the master plan conceivably, or would there be some appendix that we have to add that would be, these are the impacts of the master plan?
I don't think the master plan would necessarily change. What the CEQA document will do is what are the potential impacts of the master plan. It will be, because it's a master plan, there's going to be in the future, for example, the CEQA document will do environmental assessment of what we know, but for example, restrooms. We don't know necessarily which parks will get a restroom, so there may be further environmental analysis that has to be done later. So it's really a programmatic CEQA document, but there may be additional CEQA that has to be done later depending on what comes out of this. So for example, even Cubberley, if we do something at Cubberley, or say we construct a new pool somewhere, the CEQA document that's done for this master plan isn't going to cover the environmental impacts of those projects. So there'll have to be additional CEQA done. So it's pretty high-level CEQA that's done for this, but I can't imagine it would change anything in the plan itself.
It still seems strange that you need something like that for an inspirational document, but I guess I'm preaching the choir. Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions?
I would like to add that there is a project webpage, Palo Alto ParksPlan.org. Right now, right in the front of the page, it's real easy. You can open the document and look at it if you'd like. If you scroll down to the bottom on the right-hand side, there is an appendix. That's you can click on, and it starts to follow through basically the full analysis work. So if you're interested in seeing some of the analysis work that went on, that's a good place to kind of follow the progress, and that's what kind of everything is stored there to look at. So the webpage is it's a good tool to use if you want to do more research about the master plan. So as you can see, I don't know if this is on your screen, but basically if you click that review box, the document itself is located there, and you can open it up and see it. It's got, yeah. Click the link that's on there. There it is. So there's the actual document itself to look at. And then back on the web page, if you're, Kristen, if you scroll down to the bottom so they can see the, for all the other, it's like a long distance mouse. So right here basically, and if you click on this top one, each one of these is a link to basically that analysis work that went on. So if you want to see demographic work or the analysis of the actual parks themselves and what's in there, the analysis of all the programs and how many are there. They basically exist all right there, and you can, click on basically the link and you can open that up. So that's an easy way to look at it. You can see Kristen's binder back there in the back. That's basically the size of the analysis work that went into the project, so it does entail quite a bit. It's easier to look at it in this respect.
I'm just going to add to Peter, and in more than just analysis, really it's the public input process where there was probably 15 different sources of public input that we gathered. I think people were tired of hearing about the parks plan by the end, but we asked the question about people's interests and in a whole variety of different ways, which was really actually quite interesting, from a Map Peter program where it was an interactive map where people could pick their favorite park or recreation facility and then tell us about it, why they like it. Intercept surveys. We even had, towards the end, a survey where we sort of understood the priorities and were testing them against the public, but then gave them a certain amount of money that they could spend on all of those priorities, and how would they allocate that funding. And that was fascinating to get that input. And so just, a whole lot of different ways. So I think it was effective in the end. But it's worth going to the website and taking a look and just exploring those documents.
It was interesting, there were some topics like dog parks that most people didn't want to fund, but those who wanted to fund it really felt strongly about it. And same with accessibility. If you look at the surveys, accessibility is very low, but there's a lot of people that feel very strongly about accessibility. So we have to balance that. When we look at it, you can't just look at, it's not simple, yeah.
One of the challenges with asking or doing this outreach is that often you have a whole number of new questions once you get the survey results back. But that's part of what the master plan is. I think it's a guide as we get into actually implementing and executing on a project. It's back to the public again and making sure that we got it right, we understand it correctly before we actually start building.
Thank you very much. It was good to hear one more time. It's like an oldie on the radio station. Okay. Next one is ad hoc updates. David or Ann, do you have any ad hocs?
Jim and I were on the sort of gym sharing space ad hoc committee, and I think once we got into the master plan and started talking about some of the goals and objectives, that committee seemed to be either redundant or not important, and so I think we don't really have an update. In fact, I'm not so sure we need that committee, but we can talk about that at the retreat, yeah.
So I was involved in 2 committees. One of them was about Matadero Creek bike or pedestrian path. And I just wanted to let people know that when we had the last set of storms, and I happened to be on the Greer Bridge over Matadero Creek, and the water was all the way up to the top, it makes it pretty clear that it's a very difficult challenge to have a path along that creek because it's such a flood control. Flood control is such an important part, and I'm not sure how we're going to solve that or if we're going to solve that. But it became abundantly clear that flood control is a tremendous aspect of that challenge.
Although we had the same challenge on the Adobe underpass. We had the same challenge on the Adobe underpass, and we were able to work and get that through. So I think, obviously it's not going to be year-round path, but I think half the year we can have an underpass at Matadero. That's still possible.
Right.
And you also had...
The second...
Oh, go ahead.
Second item was we started working on the Baylands Comprehensive Plan, and I wanted to know when you'll come back with the first information about that. is there any update?
Yes, we just finished the process of interviewing and selecting the firms that will lead that plan. So we've got a company we're just entering the contract with them now. So the expectation would be we'd get them on board probably in 2 to 3 weeks, I think, and we'll start reaching out to stakeholders. One of the core elements will be the ad hoc from the commission to join that, along with some other environmental stakeholders around the Baylands.
And will the new ITT project be looked at, the new ITT property be part of that comprehensive plan?
Yes, it will, but it won't include elements, and I think Commissioner Moss and I had looked into this in depth, and we realized to some degree it needs a greater deal of hydrology study of what's happening in that wetland area. It won't get into I think, an in-depth scientific study of the hydrology. It'd be more broad than that, I believe.
Right.
But it'll tie it into the overall context of the Baylands Preserve, which would be great.
And we talked about some low-hanging fruit,
Yeah.
about being able to connect to the regular part of the Baylands.
I think that's right.
And that probably, if we can talk about that.
I think so.
That would be great. And then one other thing, the Baylands, you're doing a tremendous amount of work out there at the Baylands Center. And what part will that be part of the Baylands comprehensive plan, or will it be separate?
No, that'll be included too. Yeah, an analysis of how it functions in coordination with environmental volunteers eco center, because we've got these dual interpretive centers in the same preserve, how to make sure they're complementary and spreading the right kind of interpretive messaging. Also, the signage around the center itself and within itself will be tied to the overall preserve, making sure that they're in concert and telling a full story.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. We'll move on to department report, dog park update and selection of new ad hoc committee.
So I mentioned a little earlier in our discussion about the Parks Master Plan and our process in the city that we're working on this, adding a new dog park. In fact, we've been working on it for almost a decade. Before we even started the Parks Master Plan, we've been talking about adding dog parks. As I mentioned, we've made some good headway. We held public meetings in December to look at 2 near-term options. And when I say near-term, it was the concept was the previous, before we had the turnover of the commission, there was a will on the commission to see if we could make a dog park happen in advance of the Parks Master Plan actually being approved. They know very well the process takes time to get through all the iterations. They knew the CEQA process would be lengthy, and they didn't want to wait because we have a very patient but very sincere group of stakeholders advocating for dog parks. And as I mentioned, they've been doing this for years, and their patience is wearing thin, and they're expecting some action. And we'd love to help make it happen. Because this is such a long-standing need, it's nothing we didn't know about long before we embarked on the outreach of the Parks Master Plan. So it's not like this was an unknown. It's a very well-known need for our community. And so with that knowledge, the commission sent a memo to council saying we'd like to proceed and have a approval to go ahead and pursue a near-term dog park in advance of your approval of this Parks Master Plan. And council seemed to indicate that they agreed with that, and so we proceeded. We held these public meetings, and then unfortunately we couldn't move on because the commission wasn't filled yet. So now that we're filled, what I'm asking tonight is if I could have a couple volunteers to join an ad hoc committee, work with me directly, and hopefully we could move this forward relatively quickly and come back for the March meeting for a full discussion. And then shortly thereafter, if there's the will and the agreement, both with the commission and our community on a way forward, make that happen. Oh, I should also note that Commissioner McCauley indicated that he might be interested in serving on this if there wasn't anyone else who was really interested.
Okay, anyone interested?
I am definitely interested.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other interests? Any other dog people here?
So I'm a dog person, so keep me in the loop.
Okay, so we'll have Commissioner Cribbs and Commissioner Cawley, if he's still interested. And we can revisit this then at the retreat, but let's go forward with those 2 then. Okay. A couple questions, but we are now to comments and announcements. Aquatics, that was passed. You want to give us an update on the aquatics?
Chair Rector, yeah, we've talked about aquatics a couple times before the new year, and as we discussed, we were planning to go to the city council with a contract for the swim lesson component of the aquatics program, which we did, and it was approved, and very happy to report that we'll be able to offer almost twice as many swim lessons in 2017 as we did previous years. So that's really great for the public, more lessons during the summer period, but also in advance of summer, so families and kids can learn to swim before the summer is underway, so starting in April and May, and then also swim lessons that'll go into October, August and September, October. So thrilled with that. The next step on the aquatics program is thinking about a one-firm operator for the entire program. As you know, we're looking at Team Sheeper for that, and comparing that against what would it take if we kept it in-house, and what would that look like, and what would the cost be for doing that? So we're going through the analysis of that, and we'll be back to the commission to discuss that, and hopefully go to council and have some recommendation through the spring, which really ties to the operating budget process that we're just beginning now.
Okay. So we probably might revisit this in a couple of months, or what's the time frame?
Yeah, so within the next couple of months, certainly. And we're continuing to work with the lap swimmers, with the Rinconada Masters, with the Palo Alto Swim Club, and others that are interested in this, and meeting with them and getting Team Sheeper and them together to try and figure out if there is a way to come up with a set of terms and use of the pool that works for everybody.
I mean, I think this is a solvable solution.
I think so, too.
A solvable problem.
Yeah.
I think we can come to a solution. But this is, again, public input. It takes time.
It does.
So did you say that the number of swim lessons during the summer will be about the same, but you're going to double the length, you're going to offer them in April and May and early June and September and even October?
Yeah.
And that's how you're going to double the number of lessons, is that right?
Yes, but we will have more swim lessons in the summer as well. What we haven't done in the past is had swim lessons on Saturday and Sundays, and that's something that we know the community is interested in. We will be providing Saturday and Sunday swim lessons this summer. So we'll have more swim lessons in the summer as well as the extended swim lessons during the year.
Okay. Another subject, that AT&T property, there's talk about buying that and having that be Boulware Park expansion. What's the status on that?
I don't have an update on that. I haven't heard much about that.
Yeah, I heard a lot, and all of a sudden it went quiet. And I don't know
Right. It's been quiet for us too. I know that our Office of Real Estate was looking at that and had been in contact with the property owner, but I don't know more than that at this point.
Okay. Oh.
I have another question going back to the swim lessons. Often there'll be lessons at another pool in addition to Rinconada, whether it's Gun or JLS. Are there plans for that this summer, and will Team Sheeper be leading those lessons as well?
Great question, and yeah, we rent a school district pool every summer. We really like to do that in South Palo Alto because we know we have a lot of families down there. Unfortunately, this year we couldn't get any South Palo Alto pool. The only one we could get was Jordan, which is fairly close to Rinconada pool, but it is an additional pool, so we will have swim lessons throughout the summer at that pool, and yes, Team Sheeper will be providing lessons.
So you're talking about the pool at JLS? You used to do lessons at JLS.
Right, JLS is under construction, so we couldn't get that pool, and we couldn't get Gun High School or Terman pool either. So Jordan pool was the only one available to us, so we took it.
Back to the AT&T property, one of the challenges that we have is obviously that we want to expand the parks, and we have this, the properties come up with very little notice, and they're gone with very little notice. And so, so how do we expedite this particular property before it goes away?
So I have to get back to the commission on this. There's a lot involved with buying a piece of property, and that the council, of course, needs to be very involved in. And so I know the council's aware of this and that there is a potential opportunity here. I don't think it's clear yet, though, whether the property is actually for sale. At this point, I feel like I just don't have enough information to answer the question specifically, but I will find out and get back to the full commission, or Kristen will.
Yeah, one of the challenges is going to be not just looking at this one property, but a process, a fast path process, and maybe a slush fund of some sort that's available for immediate use. And we develop that ahead of time, and not just in reaction to a particular property. And I met with the Friends of the Palo Alto Parks, and they don't have very much money. They'll talk about benches and picnic areas, but to buy a piece of property is not something that they've talked about in the past. But they might change.
Yeah.
So that's why it would be nice to continue to pursue this quickly.
I had a couple of other announcements. I'm just taking advantage of the time because I'm not at every one of these meetings, and these most capable staff over here, but did want to be here for sure. This meeting, I'm here a lot actually, is that true? But a couple of other announcements. We do have our summer camp fair this Saturday, and that's a chance for families to meet all of the different camp providers and meet counselors and meet Team Sheeper, the new swim instructor firm. Is it at Mitchell Park? It's at Mitchell Park Community Center, and from 11 to 1, I believe. And if you could share that with your networks. Also wanted to let you know that most of you probably know this, that the Center for Disease Prevention and Control came to Palo Alto and did what's called an EPI-AIDS study on the teen suicide clusters that we've experienced as a community since 2009. They were called in initially by the school district with the support of Palo Alto and Project Safety Net at the beginning of 2016, and the report is now complete and will be released this Friday. It's a pretty lengthy, detailed report with a number of recommendations. So that'll be interesting, I think, for the commission to take a look at, certainly for the Project Safety Net partners and all the folks involved with youth and teen well-being and suicide prevention will be engaged in that. There is a Project Safety Net meeting planned for March 22nd. The location is to be determined, but it is from 4 to 6. And that's the topic of that meeting. So if you're interested in attending, it's open to the public, and there'll be a summary of the report and other things. So you may be interested in that. And the last thing I wanted to share was
wait, what about
What's the date of that?
Sorry.
That thing on Friday?
So it's March 3rd. It's the Santa Clara Public Health Department is our interface with the CDC, and so the report will be published on their website, and we'll make sure to send a link to the commission, so then you can just click through, and you can then also call us if you have any detailed questions about that. It's March 22nd from 4 to 6 p.m.
Would that be an appropriate presentation for a commission meeting agenda, or would it be redundant?
I think what might be better is to have maybe Mary Gloner, the Executive Director of Project Safety Net, come and talk about the collaborative, all that's happening within the collaborative and the partnerships, and then also speak about this study and the future of the collaborative and what this particular study means for how we might change what we're doing or do things with a little more emphasis in one way or another. So we can certainly set that up. We'll add it to the plan. Any other questions on that?
I don't know if it's ever been done, but that sounds to me like a great opportunity for a joint meeting with the Human Resources Commission and the Library Commission or whatever, where Project Safety Net would get to embrace everybody.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea at all. Any other questions on that? One last thing is that I think some of you may have seen this, but one thing that I'm particularly interested in is doing a better job of performance management and being able to tell sort of the story of what we do as a department and why we do it and what the outcomes are. It's very motivating for staff to know that, to have sort of this compelling scoreboard, if you will, that we're making a difference. But also, of course, in order to make decisions, you need to measure how you're doing, and if you don't do that, it's hard to know whether you're being effective. But also, just a lot of what we do is something that certainly staff are proud of, but residents are proud of. They love your parks and recreation programs, and we thought, boy, what if we did an annual report with a calendar and actually created a calendar where every month we highlighted the Arts Center or our open space properties or our parks and playgrounds, or human services. And so this was the first year doing that, and we're a little late. It took a long time to get it done. But we got it done. It's still imperfect, but it's something that I think that you'll appreciate. Some of you may have gotten it in the mail already. And it talks a little bit about the department, and it talks about outputs and outcomes of the department, but also what we tried to capture, which is the most meaningful, I think, is the impact. And the way we tried to get at that was by the voices of the community, of residents, of kids that actually go to a park or participate in the children's theater. And so in each page, you'll see at the very bottom a quote from a parent or a child, someone, and it's, I think that's the most meaningful part of the calendar. And then we tried to put in dates and things of special events and other things that we know about that would be helpful for the community. And mainly we're using the calendar for those that are most close to our department. What we'd like to do is build on this and make it available next year with a new one that's more broadly shared with community members generally. So this is a first pass. And then the last 4 pages of the calendar is sort of the annual report, where, as you heard about all the different divisions within the department, well, each page has a division and some highlights and key statistics related to 2016, and a description of the department. So I'll pass it over to you, Council Member. Okay, so you have an extra one. And take one, because the one thing that I'm meeting with all of the staff in the department, all of the different work groups, and sharing the calendar and annual report with the staff so they can see as a sense of pride for themselves about the work that they do and understand the impact that they have. But I'm also asking staff to share it with people they know that visit their center often or contribute in some way, to say, here, you can take a calendar and you can do the same thing with a neighbor or someone that cares about Parks and Rec. So.
It's really great to see, because we had the discussion, I think, in November or December about that you had about 5 special events, when really you have dozens and dozens of events on this calendar for every month. When we started to list them, it's unbelievable how many events we have that that you don't really take credit for, but really you need to include them, and you've done that. That's a fantastic thing, and I bet that if we kept this going, we would probably double it, the number of events. It's a great first start.
I had a few announcements as well. I'd like to mention another event that is coming up in March, and I guess I didn't write down the actual date. I apologize. This is our Cubberley Day, and what Cubberley Day is, so if you drive by Cubberley, it's, oh, you have it on there.
Yeah,
Great.
Saturday the 25th.
The 25th. So Cubberley Day is a day for the community to see what goes on behind the doors of all those rooms at Cubberley. So we're basically taking all those programs and bringing them outside, and the community can come and learn about them. There's performances, there's tree planting, there's a lot of the artist studios open their doors so you can go inside and see what goes on there. It's really a neat event because if you drive by Cubberley, you see some cars, but you're not really sure what's going on. It's just a great way to promote their programs to the community and for the community to learn about them. So that's happening in March as well. And then I also wanted to report on some things from that Darren provided to me, and one of those is with the winter storms we had and combined with some king tides within the bay, there were some flooding issues at the Baylands Nature Preserve. The rangers deployed almost 900 sandbags to protect the levee from damage in the Baylands. So it was also a team effort with some other departments and some other agencies to make sure that the levees were staying intact. Also with the storm.
Was this one spot, or do you know where it was?
There was one spot where I think that Rob and I looked at the video, there's actually a sort of a hole through the levee where water started seeping through. So they got into action right away and put some sandbags there so that the levee wouldn't fail completely.
Over by, kind of by Go Golf Course?
Yeah.
Okay.
And do you have some volunteer organizations that you could draw on, or just city staff? Like, is there some kind of a hotline where you could get Canopy or Actera or other volunteers to help out? Because that would be great for community building if we have a situation like that again.
So we have the Office of Emergency Services led by Director Ken Duker, does a fantastic job. We did activate the Office of Emergency Services office during some of the heavier storm events. And mostly it was community services staff and public works staff that were sort of deployed to resolve this. But to your point, we do have a list of all of those partner agencies, and they are on the ready to support and help under emergency circumstances.
And during those storms, there's also a 2-mile section of Los Trancos Creek at Foothills Park that there was some damage there, as well as many trees down. So we're probably going to wait till the end of the rainy season to do those repairs, so that 2-mile stretch is going to remain closed for the rest of winter. In addition, the Bixby Park Hills renovation is nearly complete. There's new trails, benches, and interpretive signs. There's a few more interpretive panels that are going in the near future, and then that renovation will be completed. And finally, Sarah Wallace Park was renovated by park staff. There's new pathways, landscaping, seating, trash, and recycling containers. And that is all I have.
Yeah, the gathering spot up at Bixby is done. Yeah, it looks nice. Although the north-south compass is not north-south, but it's northeast. It's almost like 45 degrees. So it's aesthetic, it's not scientific, I guess. But it looks nice. We had a lot of debate about that, and it's ended up being a good decision. Okay, I was looking at this, and one thing I want to add is the boardwalk is coming back. I'm not sure, was that June it's coming back? We should put that on the list so that doesn't fall between the cracks. The Lucy Evans Boardwalk is going to be returning in summer for a design update. Okay.
Another thing I'd like to mention about the calendar of future agenda topics that's in your packet is if there's something that any of the commissioners would like to hear about or learn about, we'd be happy to come and share that, and we can use this to sort of keep track of what we're doing throughout the year. If you mention something and we feel like, well, maybe August might be the appropriate time because we know of something that's happening associated with that topic, we can put it on this list, and that will remind us to agendize it in the future.
And there are a few,
Hi.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
I was going to say there are a few projects that you will see this year that are fairly large scale. The 101 pedestrian bridge over the 101. Of course, the Junior Museum and Zoo will come back to you with its redesign, and a Buckeye Creek hydrology study, which is actually the creek along with Los Trincos that runs through Foothills Park, will be done too. So we'll be looking at those projects as well.
So as we're talking about partnerships, I don't know whether this is appropriate, Rob, for agenda setting, but it would be really great for me to hear a presentation by the Friends of the Park, just short, about what they're doing and what their goals are, and also the Palo Alto Recreation Foundation. So those two seem to have a lot to do with what we do, and I really don't know much about them, so that would be great. And then I was wondering why the Junior Museum was so far off. It seemed like we were going to talk about that earlier in the year. Are they just not ready?
Like the Parks Master Plan, it's also going through its own CEQA review.
Ah, okay.
And they've also reduced the size, I think, of the construction scope as well, just because of the high cost of construction right now that there is to meet the budget that they have. So they've gone through some redesign of that. Okay. I do anticipate, though, fairly soon that we will be able to see something. So.
Great, thank you.
Along the lines of the Friends of Palo Alto Parks, they have their monthly meeting, or maybe it's a quarterly meeting, sometime in the next 2 weeks. And because I showed an interest in the last meeting, I think it was the one that you led in at Mitchell Park Community Center, they invited me to listen to what they're doing. So if I can get that date and time to you, can you pass it along to everybody else? See if anybody else wants to go.
Sure, yeah. Just send that to me and I'll send it out.
And then I have a couple more items that have come up in this meeting. So it sounds like in April, you're going to put the CEQA approval by us. That's going to be in April? And the approval of dog parks, that's going to be in April? Or maybe in May, I'm not sure. And then it would be nice to have something about the ITT. It would be nice to have something about the ITT park dedication. So when you find out about that, it would be nice to talk about it.
Yeah, on the ITT side, I think the commission's already voted on that unanimously. Staff.
So just coming back.
In agreement.
Coming back to us.
I think it's probably just reporting to you, because I think we're on our way to council to just make that happen. Yeah.
And then you have the Team Sheeper meeting sometime in April or May. And that's it.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk at the retreat about, do we want an ad hoc for the aquatics? That they may be need if there's community input. I don't know. We can talk at the retreat about that. Okay. So agenda for next month, we are looking at Buckeye Creek is bouncing to next month, and then a dog park discussion. Anything else? Oh, yeah. Robert Kristen will provide an update on the AT&T, the Bulware expansion property. Okay, are there any other topics that people want to talk about next month? you have anything else for next month? Okay. Then, that's it. Is there any other comments?
Were we going to talk about the retreat date?
Oh, it's retreat. Yes. So historically, we've always had it on a Friday morning. Do you have dates that you would want to investigate?
Yes, March 10th, which is not too far away, March 31st, or April 7th.
So I cannot make the April 7th, but the 31st would be great.
Yes, on April 7th for me, but not the 31st. Sorry.
So April 7th is during the PAUSD spring break, so that might not be a great
yeah,
time.
that's no
And
go.
and that's a no for me. And the early date in March
March 10th.
10th, I'll be out of town that day as well. What was it, 28th or something?
31st was another option.
31st is okay for me, it's the day before spring break.
When you say morning, what is morning?
Well, some years we've started, I think, as early as 9 or 10. Yeah, I think, and
More
other
worried
times
about
we
when
started,
More worried about when does it end?
Yeah, it's usually 9 to 1. We have lunch, and it's a
Okay.
working lunch.
Okay,
So-
but it's not 9 to 5 or?
No.
I mean, that's okay with me if it is,
I think
Usually
last
done by
year,
between 1 and 2.
some people had some morning commitments, and so we started right about lunch and went till 4 or something like that. But I think in general, it works out better if we start at 9 or 10 and do the 4 hours over lunch.
And would March 24th be a possibility? That would be the Friday before the next commission meeting.
I'm actually on vacation that day,
Oh,
and the Friday before.
and the Friday before.
Point well taken.
So my vote would be the 31st, but I would prefer 9 to 5, 9 to 1 or 8 to, the earlier the better.
So we might have to send out, like you said, a doodle poll and with some other options. So we'll go ahead and do that.
Okay.
Thanks, Kristen.
The meeting with the Palo Alto Parks and Rec, Palo Alto Parks, Friends of Palo Alto Parks is March 21st at noon at 1950 University.
March 22nd, you said?
March 21st at noon.
So would they really want us all to show up, or would they prefer a delegate to show up?
I don't know, I'll be there, so I can certainly represent us.
I think, yeah, this is a board meeting, right? This the Friends
think so,
Board
yes.
meeting. Yeah, so they probably want to know, they would appreciate knowing if there's going to be people there.
They wanted to tell me stuff.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
didn't want me to tell them stuff, they wanted to tell me stuff. So I can report what I hear.
I think that would be great to have a representative from the commission attend
Should
and you
we,
can report back.
should we in fact appoint an official representative so that he has some responsibility to us and authority with them, or?
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Set. Okay, then I need a motion.
To adjourn?
Okay. A second?
Second.
Second, no. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. We'll see you in 1 month.